It was always the Jags.
It's always the Jags. It's always the Jags.
Always the Jags.
Welcome into Always the Jags, your number one podcast for all things Jacksonville, all things Jaguars, all things Duval. Today, we are going to take a look at my mock draft. This is my pre-free agency mock draft. So we're assuming that everything that I mentioned before in free agency has happened. So if you haven't caught the last one, just a quick recap. I was able to keep Devin, Lloyd, and Travis Etienne. I released Chuma Adoga, Hunter Long, and Johnny Munt. So currently we only have 2 tight ends on the roster in Quinton Morris and Brenton Strange. And we're going to assume that I have not brought in John Franklin Myers. So I think he's going to get a lot of money. And I played around with that idea, but I'm assuming that we're not getting him. So now we're going to enter my mock draft. And I'm going to tell you who I would be targeting at each spot and and what I think it'll take in order to get them. Because I do a couple of trades in this just to make sure that we land the guys that we need. So, unfortunately, Jaguars do not have a first round pick. Now, you can debate whether I do kind of wish we had a first round pick. My basic thought process is when we traded up for Travis Etienne, it shouldn't have cost us our second round pick and our first round pick. We should have been able to move from 3 to 2 for either one first rounder or that second rounder, right? Would have been even better if it was the first rounder next year because we ended up being so much better than we thought. And then that second rounder, like last year, like that would have been. But again, picks from this year are worth more. Or maybe we could have given up one of our thirds, right? But as I look back, it really shouldn't have cost that much. Because that's 3 players that we traded to get a guy who can play both ways, right? But that's still only 2 spots. Now, again, 2 first-round picks, that makes sense. But just that high second, I don't know how we let the Browns get away with leasing that from us. But do I regret the trade? No, because I think it gave our team a lot of juice and a lot of interest, and the players kind of played like that. Had Travis Etienne be healthy and been playing cornerback, like who even knows what happens when he gets to the playoffs, you know what I mean? But also it might be hard because we may not have the Parker Washington breakout because he was filling in a lot. So, we take whatever we can. At the end of the day, we went 13-4. I said the only way this trade is going to work is if we make the playoffs, and that pick is a late 20s pick. That Browns pick is a late 20s pick. So while it would be great for us to have it, because I know we could get my top guy on this list, I'm okay if this is the way that it ends up playing out. So my number one target for the draft, with the Jaguars selecting in the second round. Now, in order to get this guy, this is probably not going to happen, first of all, because his stock recently shot way through the roof. But my first pick in round 2, who I was able to get kind of consistently before, is Akheem Mesidor, the edge from Miami. Now, Akheem Mesidor paired up with Reuben Bain Jr., and Miami made the national championships last year. And Mesidor is one of those guys that just gets it. He can set the edge in the run. He has a lot of pass rushing moves, and he's very experienced. He's almost like the opposite of Trayvon Walker because Trayvon Walker has more athletic ability, but he wasn't very experienced and didn't have a lot of moves. And Akheem Mesidor comes in as a 25-year-old rookie. For comparison, Trevor Lawrence is 25, and he just finished his 5th year in the league. So that'll tell you why he could drop, right? Like originally, he was kind of ranked as one of the like in the 50s, like a second round prospect, because teams are wary of taking someone that old. Having a 25-year-old rookie, that means, like I said, Trevor Lawrence is just turned 25. So like imagine Trevor Lawrence finishing his rookie deal at 30. That's what Akheem Mesidor is going to be for you. So in the situation, it's kind of tough because it's like that could make him fall, but also that could make him rise because they're like, yo, he's already in his prime. He already has a lot of experience. He already kind of gets it. Let's get him in the first round. And then depending on how good he is, we can pick up the 5th year option, maybe throw a franchise tag. If we can get 6 years out of him and then let him hit the open market as a 31, 32-year-old edge defender, that would be a win for us. That's what most teams are probably thinking because you have the option to put the 5th-year option on them when you pick them in the first round. So that makes it tough for us to actually land him. It's looking like he's going to go in the first round because he is one of the better edge rushers. The only thing holding him back was his age, which would have been perfect for us. So we'll see. I'll be watching the first round very closely to see how that all plays out. So I had to trade up 5 even before he shot up at I think the Senior Bowl and the Combine really shot up his stock. Even before then, I had to consistently trade up 5 spots in order to get him. And so that's going to cost us at least a 5th round pick. Now, for any of these 2 guys that I'm also going to target with this pick as well, because if we don't get him, there's other guys we can target and get, because that means other players will fall down to us, and I'll tell you who those players are. For that, we had to trade, so I'm going to do this mock draft as if we traded pick number 164 to move up 5 spots with the Panthers, because that's about how much it'll cost, a 5th round pick. If we can make the deal with the Lions, that would be even better to get to number 50. But the 5th round pick is just like a little bit too not enough to get that trade. Even if we did 162, our second 5th round pick, which is a little bit higher. I tried to throw in a future 7th, still wouldn't get it. So hopefully we can trade with the Lions and Panthers to get to that 50-51 range. And we're going to need to if we want to get any of these other 2 players. So if Akheem Mesidor isn't there, there's 3 other players that I'd be looking at. Because again, the edge and defensive tackle talent in this draft is actually pretty good. It's not a great running back draft. From what I heard, it's a so-so wide receiver draft. Cornerback draft is pretty strong. Tight end is pretty strong here. Offensive linemen, trenches are pretty strong on both sides. Again, I think it's a so-so linebacker class. I think it's a pretty good safety class as well. Not really sure exactly which way. And then obviously it's a pretty weak quarterback class. Fernando Mendoza is going to go number 1. Everyone else maybe in the 2nd round or 3rd round. So I always love when there's a good quarterback draft because that's better for the Jaguars, right? You know, when you don't need a quarterback, it pushes other guys down. But since it's not a great quarterback draft, it's going to be a hard year to not have a lot of picks. So, like if we had this many picks in 2024, that would have been great because 6 quarterbacks went in the first round, and that pushed a lot of guys down to us. However, the silver lining is in 2027, that's going to probably be a heavy quarterback draft, and there's going to be a lot of quarterback-needy teams with all the teams that suddenly might be looking for new quarterbacks, right? Especially because Dontay Moore went back to college. So we have something to look forward to in the future. But for right now, we'll have to make work with this. So if we don't get Akheem Mesidor, my number 1 target to replace him would be Mason Thomas. He's an edge player out of Oklahoma. And he showed a lot of pass rush skills. The thing that's kind of knocking on him is his run defense ability. It's not that great. So there's a lot of suggestions for him to come in as a situational pass rusher, which in the Jaguars case would be absolutely perfect. Now the difference with Akheem Mesidor is if I'm able to get him, I'm actually kind of looking to replace Trayvon Walker with Akheem Mesidor. I know it's going to be hard to hear, but I don't think we're going to pay 2 defensive tackles $15 million north in a year. Trayvon Walker is a great player. I think he'll probably be a better run defender than Akheem Mesidor will be, but I think Akheem Mesidor might be a better edge rusher. So even if we don't end up getting Akheem Mesidor to a 2nd contract because of his age, I still think because Trayvon Walker's in a contract year, Akheem Mesidor is kind of like going to end up replacing him and play in packages this year, but this would be if we're not resigning Trayvon Walker. Now, if we take Mason Thomas, that gets a little more cloudy because Mason Thomas doesn't quite have that run defense acumen yet. So that's something that Campanelli would need to build on, but for right now, we can have Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen set the edge on run plays, Devon Hamilton stuff set up the middle with Eric Armstead, and then on designated passing downs where we know it's going to be a pass because it's 3rd and 10 or something like that, let's put Mason Thomas out there, let's slide Trayvon Walker inside and get John Franklin Myers on the inside if we ended up signing him, or have Eric Armstead on the inside, either one. If we do that, now we've really got a juicy front, and all Mason Thomas really would have to worry about in his first year is getting after the quarterback and using those pass rush skills. And then Anthony Campanelli can kind of like watch him and see how to grow and develop. Because again, I still think this pick is going to have to replace Trayvon Walker. It's just going to be really hard to replace his run defense prowess. And I think the closest guy that comes to that would even be in this range is Akheem Mesidor. But chances are he won't be in this range because now I see him going as high as 27 because his stock really went through the roof. So Mason Thomas is the pick here at 51 if Akheem Mesidor is not present. The next guy we could target, Cassius Howell, kind of a similar thought. Again, if the other guy's not present, we could target Cassius Howell, kind of the same role and idea as Mason Thomas, like a designated pass rusher that could grow into a larger role. And then, or if those guys are gone, then there's a chance that we could get Leigh Hunter, who's a highly touted defensive tackle, who's got some pass rushing chops, and we could use him at this pick as well. So hopefully one of those 4 guys will fall to this spot, even if we have to get a 5th to go get up. The pick is Akheem Mesidor, but Mason Thomas, Cassius Howell, or Leigh Hunter work here as well. Leigh Hunter is a defensive tackle, though, so we'll want to find an edge later on because I have us going edge first because I think that's more pertinent. So I prefer if we get an edge player here at number 2, but we could go ahead and get a defensive tackle if Leigh Hunter is just the best player on the board. Moving on to pick number 81. So again, we are assuming that I was able to nab Akheem Mesidor. So at pick number 81, I'm getting Gracen Halton. Now, Gracen Halton is probably not going to be here as well. This is another, sometimes Gracen Halton falls, sometimes they don't. It would be a steal if we were to get Gracen Halton towards the top of the 3rd round. It would be a steal. I think they're projected for a 3rd rounder or a late 2nd, but don't get me wrong, it would be a steal. Probably not the most realistic to count on this. But Gracen Halton is one of those rare defensive tackles that, again, has that pass rushing juice and shown flashes of being able to really press the pocket and influence the passer. And again, that's what we need. We've got the run defense down. We need guys who can show some prowess when it comes to rushing the passer. So that's where Gracen Halton comes in. So, of course, if Gracen Halton's not available, that's what makes this next one a little bit tricky because there's not a lot of guys that can really fit and have that pass rushing juice that we kind of need. Like I said, that's kind of something that there's 3 defensive tackles that really are kind of known for it. Leigh Hunter, Kristen Miller, and Gracen Halton. And chances are both of them will be gone by the time we're at this pick in the 3rd round. So we could target Dominique Orange from Iowa State. He's nicknamed Big Citrus. He can kind of do something similar. He's really good at pressing gaps and taking 2 people to guard him, right? Occupying lanes, which can kind of free up things for everybody. But again, he's not necessarily known for his pass rushing juice. So obviously the standout pick would be Gracen Halton. But chances are Gracen Halton may not be there. So in that case, I would kind of rearrange the draft a little bit. That would be my target for this pick. But if Gracen Halton is not there, since our other 3rd round picks are so close together, we could target somebody else at a different spot and then kind of move everything up. And I'll kind of explain how that'll work here. So this is my pick for 88, right? At 88, I'm taking Treydan Stukes, the cornerback out of Arizona. Now, again, if Gracen Halton's not there at 81 and we don't see another guy that we like, I don't know how I feel about Big Citrus. I mean, we could take him there or we could just wait and hold off. I'm okay with us taking Treydan Stukes at 81 instead, if Gracen Halton isn't there. But my official pick is going to be Treydan Stukes at 88 because, again, he should probably still be there around that range. This guy was a phenomenal cornerback in Arizona. I'm surprised he's not getting more love, but he's a little bit older and he has some injury history. But again, he's not even coming in to be our cornerback 2. He's coming to compete with Jarrian Jones to be our cornerback 2. And the best thing about this guy, I was kind of going back and forth between guys like him, Hezekiah Moses, Malik Muhammad. There are some other good cornerbacks in this range that could kind of fight for that cornerback 2 spot. But I decided Treydan Stukes is my guy because those other guys could go higher as well. So we probably have to use our first 3rd round pick on them. And the thing about Treydan Stukes is he excels in zone coverage. And that's what Anthony Campanile loves to run. And the best thing you can do is take a guy and have him do what he's good at. Like, there's such a thing as best player available, right? But again, you also want to play your players to your strengths, to their strengths. And once you are the people in charge, like it's your staff bringing in the players, then you can actually put them in positions to be successful. You can actually make them more successful by saying, hey, I want this guy because he'd fit really great in my zone coverage scheme. Treydan Stukes allowed a 35.9% passer rating, graded out as a 90 cornerback in zone coverage schemes, right? So that's why I say he would be excellent for our team. And I think it could also be why he doesn't get as much love, because when you play in a heavy zone scheme, it's harder to stand out, against other players that are on the field, because you're usually passing them off in zone. Like cornerbacks that thrive in zone coverage, or quarterbacks that thrive in man-on-man coverage, single coverage, often get a lot more love, because those are the Jalen Ramsey, stuff like that. Everybody sees them going one-on-one with these guys. Pat Surtain, stuff like that. So I think that's why Treydan Stukes has kind of fallen. But again, zone coverage cornerbacks have to be fast. They'll help match up against faster cornerbacks faster receivers in the NFL. I think he's the guy for us at 88. If he's not there if we got Grace Halton at 81 and then he's not there at 88, hopefully someone, again, like Malik Muhammad or Hezekiah Masses, because those two guys, they're kind of scheme diverse, but they're just not as, I think overall they might be better cornerbacks than Treydan Stukes, but they're not as good in zone coverage as Treydan Stukes is. So again, if he's not there, though, Malik Muhammad is not a bad one to get, nor is Hezekiah Masses to get. Those would be like my targets there. And again, this is assuming we don't re-sign Monteric Brown, because again, I do think it is a pretty deep cornerback class, and we can get someone who might even be able to start for us next year. So the target here is Treydan Stukes, but again, Hezekiah Masses, Malik Muhammad, if either one of them is there, that would be fine as well. And again, if we're assuming that Grace Halton is not there and we took Treydan at 81, my next player is also one I wouldn't mind taking at 88 as well, but in this case, he fell to us at 100. And there's a couple of different players here. I like Drew Shelton from Penn State. He'd be the official pick. But really, any offensive guard tackle prospect, I think, fits really well in this range. Again, we're assuming we got Gracen Halton at 81, got Treydan Stukes at 88, so here we are at 100. So yeah, my pick is Drew Shelton, but it could be like Brian Parker II. He's a very good center that has some guard flexibility. Drew Shelton, like I said, he's the guy that has a lot of flexibility. Tristan Leigh is a guy who can play almost any spot along the offensive line, and kind of that versatility and depth piece is what we need to get in the third round, because after the third round, the offensive tackle depth falls way off. It falls way off. So we need to make sure we get a guy that can not only come in if need be, but we could potentially look at to become a starter next year if, say, we look at our cap and we release Hainsey, we release McCarry, we release Ezra Cleveland. Then I'd want, Jonah Monheim to step up, Wyatt Malum to step up, and whoever we got at 100 to step up, whether that be Drew Shelton, Tristan Leigh, Brian Parker, or Kenyan Rutledge. That was another really good guard that should be available in this third round range in the back of the third round. So I think there's enough offensive tackle prospects for us to wait to the back of the third round to get him. I don't think we can wait past 81 to get Treydan Stukes. He's going to go probably earlier than that. And like I said, you already know about Gracen Halton. So we can wait a little bit in order to make this pick, but we should make it at the end of the third round and snatch one of those offensive line prospects, because they're not going to fall into the fourth round, any of those guys. Because all of these guys could be potential starters, and we all know how hard it is to find reliable starters at offensive line in the NFL. So that's my pick right here. Like I said, officially Drew Shelton, but Tristan Leigh, Brian Parker, Kenyan Rutledge, I'm okay with any of them, really, whoever's there. Our next pick is at 118. So we have 18 picks deep into the first round. 18 picks from the end of the third round until we pick again in the fourth. Now this pick we may have to move up for. And this player that I want, I'd be okay with us picking him at 100 instead. And we could take a defensive tackle here if we didn't end up landing Gracen Halton. And it'll make a little bit more sense. But we may have to trade in a couple of scenarios. I had to trade a future 7th or I think a future 6th in order to get this player. So that might be something we end up having to do. We will see. Hopefully, if we did have to trade something, I would want to trade a future asset or an asset that we got in from the Walker Little trade. But it might have to happen. It just depends on how many are on the board. So the player that I'm talking about is Dallen Bentley, the tight end out of Utah. And I fell in love with this kid watching him play. I was going through the tight ends, and it's not like we necessarily like really. I mean, I do think we actually kind of really need a tight end because when Brenton Strange got injured, our offense fell off a cliff. And it's not just because Hunter Long and Johnny Munt don't have that reliable as hands, but they're also not as good blockers. And so what I want to do, I'm taking Dallen Bentley at 118 because this dude might be the best blocker in the draft. He is tenacious, he is nasty, he is technically sound, and guys don't get off their blocks from him. And he's got enough speed and power to just push someone out of the way. Like when you watch that Travis Etienne run against the Chargers and you saw our 2 guys blocking and paving the way for him to get to the end zone, that's what Dallen Bentley does. He would fall right into that. And so even out of all the tight ends out there, Max Flair, there's a couple other ones, Eli Raridan, I don't think any of them are as good blockers as Dallen Bentley. And he still has catching ability. He showed some high production levels, and he showed that he can have some. Utah was a very run-first offense, so he's very used to blocking in the run game. But he showed that he has some pass-catching chaps, just like Brenton Strange. And so with this, Liam Cohen can run a lot of 2 tight end sets. And we saw Trevor Lawrence really air it out, right? And I think when we start next season, I'm not going to say like Trevor Lawrence is going to air it out less, but I think Liam Cohen, like if you ask me Liam Cohen's favorite game, it's probably the Chargers game because the way we blew holes open in the run game was phenomenal. And then our run blocking just kind of got worse as the season went on. I can't explain it. So in this case, instead of bringing in that 6th offensive lineman like we did with Chuma Adoga, we put Dallen Bentley on the field. We do some 2 tight end sets and smash mouth the team into oblivion, and then when they're not paying attention, oh yeah, Brenton Strange and Dallen Bentley can both catch. So to me, it's very important that we get this specific tight end. Like when I was mentioning those other tackles and guards, I was kind of like they're kind of interchangeable. Any of them is good. You just have to pick them in the 3rd round because they're going to drop out of the 3rd round. Dallen Bentley is the guy. Like if he goes in the 2nd, I will be sad and I wouldn't even want us to take a tight end. The only other tight end I consider taking, Eli Raridan, could be a guy. I think he'll go earlier in this because he's shown a little bit more in the catching game. But he's a guy that we could take, or we could take Jack Endries out of Texas. He's a guy we could take in this spot because he's a pretty good blocker and he's got some catching chaps. He got catching chops and he played well with Arch Manning. But the guy is Dallen Bentley. Now, when I mentioned about Gracen Halton not being here, so at 118, I'm targeting Dallen Bentley. If I need to move up to do it because tight ends, like if we leave the 3rd round, if we leave the 3rd round and Dallen Bentley's the next tight end up, we need to make a trade, right? We need to make a trade. And I would be willing to even trade our 5th round pick. I'd rather trade the 6th round pick, but whatever it takes to move all the way up to like 105, right? Because he's going to get taken. So that would be the target at 118. But again, let's say for a second that Gracen Halton wasn't there. Then I'm okay with us kind of moving everybody up. So we take Treydan Stukes at 81. We take one of those offensive lineman prospects at 88. There's not really one of them between Drew Shelton, Tristan Leigh, Brian Parker II, and Kenyan Rutledge that stands out over any of the other one. I might be saying his name wrong, but Kalen Rutledge seems like he could maybe be the best one out of all of them. But any one of those 4 at 88, we could take them. And then I'm definitely okay with taking Dallen Bentley at 100. If, like I said, we missed out on Gracen Halton, because there's not really a defensive tackle that I feel really strongly about taking at 81, if not Gracen Halton. So in that case, I would just kind of move my board up for the guys that I'm targeting, because these picks are all so close together. And I've seen Dallen Bentley, like they have him ranked as a number 118th prospect, and we pick at number 117. So in theory, it lines up. But he's gone. Like he may not be there when we get there at if we end up waiting till 117. And it depends on the board and how it falls, and if there's a run on tight ends in the third round, which there probably will be because there's a few out there that could play a nice role as a backup tight end. So Dallen Bentley gets some nasty 2 tight end sets. Oh, I'm getting excited just thinking about it. So then again, like I said, if we moved everything up and we took Dallen Bentley at the end of the third round, but we didn't get Gracen Halton. One player that I'm really okay with us taking right here, Landon Robinson. And so basically the way the board shifts, because I don't think we wouldn't need to take him all the way at 81 where we're first picking if Gracen Halton isn't there, but he's my second defensive tackle prospect that I like the most. So I would just wait until 118 and land him, because he is undersized, so that means he won't be as good against the run, but he's shown an ability to be able to split double teams and really get after the passer. And again, that's what we're looking for. That's what we need, that pass rushing juice. So I'm very okay if we land him at 118. This is about the range that he's projected to be. He's shown a lot of explosive ability. The thing that pushed him down so far, I think Navy, smaller school, and also that he's his undersized. Being undersized probably hinders his value a lot more. If you told me that as much as I like Gracen Halton, I'll put it this way. If the only way to guarantee that we end up with Treydan Stukes, one of those offensive line prospects, and Dallen Bentley meant to pass on Gracen Halton at 81, I would, because I know this guy, Landon Robinson, would be there potentially at 118. He's a good player. He's, like I said, he's got some explosive abilities. And again, that pass rushing juice and defensive tackle, there's a lot of really good run stuffers in this draft, and they're going to go pretty high, but that pass rushing juice is a little bit harder to find. And for specifically what our team needs, I'd rather wait a couple of rounds to get a guy that has that pass rushing than get another immovable nose tackle, because we kind of already have one in Devon Hamilton. So like I said, the official target there is Dallen Bentley. Potential replacements, Jack Endries and Landon Robinson. Potential replacements, Jack Endries and Landon Robinson, again, depending on what happens with Gracen Halton. Next, we go on to pick number 162. Remember, I told you I'm going to trade away our 5th round pick to ensure we can get one of those 3 edge guys. If we end up with Leigh Hunter at 56, which, wouldn't be mad at, I'd probably rearrange the board a little bit to try to get an edge player in there, like Josephs, who's a guy that we could end up getting in that 3rd round. We'd want to use it on the edge player in the 3rd round, though. But right here at 162, we're going to double up a defensive tackle, and we got Dontay Corleone, the defensive tackle out of Cincinnati. He's also shown some pass rushing juice, right? I think he's been falling down boards lately. I've seen him go as high as like the 2nd round, but in this case, I was able to nab him in the 5th. Not sure if there's injury concerns or history concerns with him or what's going on, but he could fall and we could end up being able to snag him at 162. It appears like he's been there consistently whenever I was doing this. So again, if you told me that I get Treydan Stukes and Dallen Bentley if I pass on Gracen Halton, but I can come away with Landon Robinson and Dontay Corleone, yeah, that's all right. Maybe Dontay can take over for Devon Hamilton in a couple of years, and Landon can take over for Eric Armstead. I mean, if we have John Franklin Myers, then they can take all the time they need to develop, right? But that's all right. And we really would have fortified that line with, again, some pass rushing juice. So again, you imagine it on 3rd and long, pull out pull out Devon Hamilton, switch Trayvon Walker inside, maybe pull out Eric Armstead. We are throwing in Akheem Mesidor. We are throwing in Mason Thomas. We're throwing in Landon Robinson or Dontay Corleone. Really have a force to get after the quarterback in that situation. Because I think that's what held us back in the playoff game. We just couldn't get the pressure that we needed on Josh Allen. Next, moving on to pick number 195. Now, some of these picks, kind of end up being throwaway guys that don't end up making the roster. But I actually was very intentional with these picks, and I was able to get some players that I think will end up making a difference for us. So what I mean by that, at 195, I actually drafted Cole Payton, the quarterback, out of North Dakota State. Now, that might seem a little bit odd because we already have a backup in Nick Mullins, and obviously Trevor Lawrence isn't going anywhere. But I like Cole Payton because he offers a little bit of the Taysom Hill-ness. And I kind of like having a backup because I still don't know how I feel about Nick Mullins. I don't think he has the strongest arm. I think I still keep him on the roster in this case and just see what we end up doing with Cole Payton. But Cole Payton has the athleticism and the arm strength to do a couple of Taysom Hill-like packages, which I kind of like because then we would essentially kind of probably keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster, but let Cole Payton almost be like a part fullback, part tight end, part running back kind of player, right? So like he's a third player, but we can use him in a lot of different ways. And again, God forbid Trevor Lawrence get hurt. I would love for us to actually sign a stronger backup quarterback than a stronger backup quarterback than Nick Mullins, like Gardner Minshew would be awesome. Or if Geno Smith gets released, oh, you better believe I am seeing if we can sign him to be our backup quarterback, right? And then I'm booting out Nick Mullins. But either way, I'm still taking Cole Payton here because I like his versatility. And again, you can kind of stress a defense out when, again, Taysom Hill did a lot of running packages, but if you don't know if he's going out for a pass, if you don't know if he's blocking, if you don't know if he's passing, like going to pass the football, or if you don't know if he's going to be running it, you can give the defense extra time to have to think. Now, Liam Cohen may not like those gimmicky Taysom Hill-like plays. We don't really know yet. But for the sake of this, I think it's a reasonable value. 6th round, let's go ahead and take Cole Payton. So next, we're getting into the 7th round. And for this pick, I think we'd have to trade our last 7th rounder to move back into the 6th round to get this last player. So in this scenario, that's what I did. And so the last player that we end up drafting is CJ Daniels out of Miami. CJ Daniels, he's just a big body receiver. He's a one-on-one catch specialist, jump ball, can go up and get it. He's got long limbs, a big frame, acrobatic. The knock on him is, when you have a bigger wide receiver, they tend to not get separation as much. And so that's kind of the knock on him and why he ends up falling so far. So he kind of played a specific role. And I don't know if I did it in the mock draft scenario, but I'm guessing and hoping that we bring Tim Patrick back. My suggestion, I think the Jaguars are only going to keep 5 wide receivers on the roster, but with Dyami Brown definitely not coming back. We're not sure if Austin Trammell or Tim Jones is going to make the active roster. Even if you keep 5 wide receivers and let Travis Etienne and let Travis Hunter back up your receivers, so really you have 6, but he's counting as a cornerback. That's Brian Thomas Jr., Parker Washington, Jacoby Myers, and Tim Patrick. Just 4 guys. And then if Travis Hunter, kind of slots in as that wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 kind of situation, there's room for CJ Daniels, right? And so CJ Daniels is going to come in. I say if we re-sign Tim Patrick to like a 1-year deal, maybe CJ Daniels can replace Tim Patrick after a little bit. But having 2 big-bodied wide receivers, that could make our end zone packages look really, really nice, right? Like imagine 2 tight end set, Brenton Strange, Dalen Bailey, Bashaw Tootin, and then you have Tim Patrick and CJ Daniels on the outside. And depending on who they have on their cornerback, the team doesn't know if you're going to run and throw, but if they end up leaving one of these guys one-on-one and they're able to make that contested catch one-on-one because they've got the ability to high point it. Because again, as the field gets shorter, you don't need as much separation. All Trevor has to do is put it up, right? Put a nice little floater and let the guy out-leap his guy and make a play. So I really love that. And I think that would be a pretty strong red zone package that we could utilize when we get down there to ensure that we come away with 7 instead of 3. So to recap in this draft, we're going to end up with Akheem Mesidor or Mason Thomas or Cassius Howell for our 2nd round pick. We end up with We end up with Gracen Halton at defensive tackle, or Landon Robinson, depending on how it falls and if we need to move some things around. I'm okay with either one of them, just basically on where they'll be picking. Let's say we end up with Drew Shelton or Keelan Rutledge, right, in the middle of the third round. We end up picking Treydan Stukes in the third round as well to kind of round out that cornerback room. And then we get to the fourth round where, again, if we get Grace Halton, then we're going to pick Dallen Bentley in the fourth round. Maybe have to trade up to get him. That could trade a future asset away. Or we're going to get Dallen Bentley in the fourth round and get Landon Robinson in. We're going to get Dallen Bentley in the third round and get Landon Robinson in the fourth round. After that, we get Dontay Corleone in the fifth round. Also, how cool is it to just be named after the Godfather? I'm sorry. He probably had, like, there are some kids you look at their names and you're like, man, you had a rough time in high school, didn't you? Or a rough time in middle school. For Dontay Corleone, I'm like, man, you must have had a great time in high school or middle school. Like, I mean, what better name could you want? Anyway, then we move on to the sixth and seventh rounds. I think these are actually both sixth rounders because I think we move up from the seventh. But in the sixth round, we get Cole Payton out of North Dakota State to play quarterback, backup quarterback, and then maybe, kind of help out on some of those, like I said, take some hill packages here and there. And we end it with CJ Daniels out of Miami, a high point catch specialist, because we actually do need to replenish our wide receiver room after this. So let me know your thoughts on this mock draft. Like I said, it's my first pre-free agency mock draft. So let me know who you think, if you would want us to get any of these players, if this seems realistic. And never forget, it was always the Jags. Thank you so much for watching Always the Jags. Make sure you like and subscribe down below. Check out some of these other videos that I'm sure you'll be interested in as we chase Duval greatness. Thank you for joining us again, and until next time.